Good evening, and welcome to the 5th Annual New York State Council of Churches Gala Awards and Fundraising Gathering. I am Mary Glasspool, Bishop Assistant in the Episcopal Diocese of New York, and it is my honor to host this evening gathering, this gala event, on behalf of the New York State Council of Churches. We are virtual this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There will be many people to thank during the course of this evening, but I would particularly like to thank all the frontline workers for the wonderful job they have been doing to keep us all safe. We also want to remember all the people who face very real health and economic challenges because of COVID, and most especially, our hearts go out to those who mourn the loss of loved ones due to the pandemic. I'd like to say a few words about the purpose of the New York State Council of Churches. It is the essence of ecumenical work to seek ways of helping all humanity to know the nurturing and continually creating presence of God. Thus, the preamble of the New York State Council of Churches includes the following sentences, quote, "It is fitting that Christians should manifest their unity by joining together to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ and to show God's good and just purposes throughout New York State. Therefore, we covenant to care for one another, safeguard the presence of vital Christian communities, provide hospitality for all, proclaim the gospel boldly in each place, and declare God's just will among the principalities and powers." End quote. From this rose the purpose of the New York State Council of Churches as a statewide organization through which Christians accomplish mission goals that can be achieved more effectively by working together. These mission goals focus on social justice, institutional pastoral care, ecumenical cooperation in education, worship, and action. Tonight, we offer awards to people in the following categories: ecumenical, social justice, chaplaincy, and affordable housing and community development.
Hi, my name is Reverend Sherry Crone, and I am so honored to be a part of this really special event. The New York State Council of Churches is near and dear to me, and I've had an opportunity to do some work with them. And I invite all of you to do some work with all of us. The New York State Council of Churches is such a wide-reaching group, a group that welcomes so many people and communities around this state. So at this time, know that every contribution that they get is used to its fullest. And so I invite you to give at this time, and know that that money is being used with creativity, with heart, and with a mind to ministry, justice, and peace. Please join me in prayer. God of mercy, God of love, God of justice and peace, we are connected tonight virtually. Usually this evening has many tables, and we've spent time, counting and putting out name tags and making sure that everybody has what they need. We think about our speakers and where they're sitting and can they get to the podium without any trouble. So this is a different night. We've actually been able to welcome in so many more people this evening than being confined by a room in the past. So we give thanks for that. We give thanks for everyone who was new to the New York State Council of Churches ministry this year, who met people that they'd never met before and realized that they could have support in their ministry that they've never had before. We pray today, dear God, for the work that we will all be doing together as we continue forward with a heart for justice, with a mind toward ministry, knowing that there are so many more who will join us in this work as we are the hands and feet of God, the hands and feet of Christ in this world. Bless us. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. No condemnation in my mind stayed on freedom. No condemnation in my mind stayed on freedom. No condemnation in my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you, Reverend Crone, for your prayer and your beautiful music. And we also want to thank Bishop Mary Glasspool for her leadership and being our terrific host this evening. And we also want to thank all of you for participating tonight. The New York State Council of Churches represent 7,000 congregations across the state of New York. We are comprised of 8 partner denominations, including the American Baptist Churches, the Episcopal Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, the Presbyterian Church USA, the Reformed Church of America, the Society of Friends, the United Church of Christ, and the United Methodist Church. The council had its beginnings in the late 19th century as the New York Sunday School Association, which sought to advocate for the education and literacy of young people. From our beginnings, we have been concerned about the sin of concentrated wealth at the expense of workers, while strongly supporting the right of workers to organize and form unions. Disgusted by poverty in the 19th century, the council worked to abolish child labor, regulate the work of mothers, and crusade against the 12-hour day for workers. In his Theology for the Social Gospel, Walter Rauschenbusch, a Baptist pastor serving the poor in Hell's Kitchen in New York City, railed against what he regarded as the selfishness of capitalism and promoted instead a form of Christian socialism that supported the creation of labor unions and cooperative economics. He asserted that an individualistic gospel made individual sin clear, but it failed to shed light on institutionalized sinfulness. He believed that the power of God would redeem the permanent institutions of human society from their inherited guilt of oppression and extortion. In our time, the New York State Council of Churches still aims to address pervasive institutional sinfulness where wealth is concentrated in few and fewer hands, while middle-class wages have remained relatively stagnant or have declined. Our institutions stand in need of God's redemption as much as they did 130 years ago. Union busting, a raging pandemic, homelessness, and lack of affordable housing, institutional racism, mass incarceration, ill treatment of prisoners, mean-spirited immigration policies, deprivation in our educational and healthcare systems, and environmental degradation are all examples of social sin which are greater than ever. We must work together to meet society's challenges because, you see, no denominational or secular entity ever has the luxury of addressing these challenges alone. Tonight, as we honor our distinguished awardees and hear presentations and introductions, you will learn more about what we value as we tell the story of the Council's ministries in New York, in the nation, and around the globe. We invite you to stay with us tonight to learn more and discern how we can work together to bring about a more just New York State, nation, and world.
Well, hi, and thank you, Peter. My name is Heather Kirk-Davidoff, and I am the brand new minister of the Westminster Presbyterian Church in Albany, New York. And in that capacity, I have just had the pleasure of being able to welcome the New York State Council of Churches as new roommates, as new renters of our building at 85 Chestnut Street in downtown Albany. You know, some of you may know that I was working on a contract basis for the Council of Churches directly before coming to Westminster Presbyterian. I was working with Peter on the Who is My Neighbor initiative. And so for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, I've been steeped in the conversation that the Council of Churches has been leading about how congregations such as the one I'm serving now can make better use of their physical space to serve the neighborhood in which they find themselves. I'm inspired by that work, and I hope with the addition of the Council of Churches in the building at Westminster, our congregation will continue to be inspired to think about how else we can open our space up and maybe even find creative uses for unused spaces in the church. Peter and I love to dream and scheme together. I think he is an amazing visionary. And we have started to dream about what could happen, what kind of synergy could happen in downtown Albany between Westminster Presbyterian and the Council of Churches and other community organizations, including other churches involved with the Focus Ministries collection of churches in downtown Albany. Could we have some sort of faith and public life series in the building that people who work for the state and other places would come over to on their lunch hour? Could we have a series of forums or small group conversations, or even just chances for different people who are involved with different issues to come together, inspire each other, resource each other around common interests? It's great to think about the future, both of my new congregation and of the council. I feel like there's so much work for us to do, but I know that when we come together as congregations, as people of faith, as people who have concerns and a passion for the improvement of the world, I know that we can do so much more together than what we can do apart. Thanks, and I hope you'll join me in supporting the Council of Churches in New York State.
Hi, I'm Thomas J. Bickerton. I'm the resident bishop of the New York Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. My territory is all of Long Island, Staten Island, Manhattan, the Hudson River Valley, the Catskill Hudson Mountains, and half of Connecticut. Last February and March, when the coronavirus began to emerge, we found ourselves in a position where we were facing a dilemma that we had never faced before. The magnitude of the COVID-19 crisis as it began to grow in intensity in our area really caused us to have to address questions that none of us had ever been able to address before. Things like, how do we deal with those that are disproportionately affected? How do we deal with the homebound who all of a sudden were really confined? How do we take care of the people in our community, make sure that they have proper PPE equipment and proper attention? How do we deal with mental fatigue and the side effects of the coronavirus that we've had to deal with? But when we were facing that, all of a sudden, something else came our way. The murder of George Floyd just put a spotlight on racial injustice in all of our faith communities and in all of our communities. And all of a sudden, alongside of COVID-19, we were dealing with protests and with racial injustice that we were having to examine from an institutional racism standpoint and into a societal expression standpoint. But we weren't through with it yet. The political unrest in our country revealed how very divided we are as a people. And all of a sudden, people of faith were having to muster up whatever we could to project a faith posture in the midst of great unrest and confusion. We were facing things that we'd never had to face together before. As a faith leader, I had to deal with the United Methodist Church. But in every one of the communities where there's a United Methodist Church, there were other faith communities, other expressions of faith. It was at that point, as a relative newcomer to the area of New York, that I began to turn to and celebrate my involvement with the New York Council of Churches. It was a breath of fresh air and a boost to the weary soul to be able to get on a Zoom call with other faith leaders from across the state of New York, to strategize together about how do we not compete with one another to get PPE equipment, but how do we mobilize ourselves together to really reach out and deal with our communities in a uniform fashion? How do we develop protocols that enabled all of the faith communities in a certain town to be able to operate off of a similar page rather than competing with one another? It gave us an opportunity, and does continue to give us an opportunity, to strategize about how we deal with racial injustice and how we begin to address, as a body of faith, the injustices that separate people one from another and cause injustices to be accentuated. And our strategies together have enabled us to talk about what does it mean to be a people of faith in the midst of a divided country. It's not about whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's about how are we as people of faith to project a public witness that talks more about unity than division, peace rather than discord, comfort rather than chaos. All of that's happened and is happening in ongoing conversations among faith leaders in the New York Council of Churches. I celebrate the new relationships that I've been able to build out of chaos. It's been out of controversy and chaos that we've found ourselves together. And I celebrate the opportunity, celebrate Peter Cook and his work as the director of the New York Council of Churches, and really want to say thanks be to God for all of my colleague faith leaders who have been able to come together for meaningful, deep, and substantive conversations around life-changing and life-threatening issues that enable us to come together to be the people of God. And so tonight, I simply say thank you for the New York Council of Churches and for the ongoing work that is ours together. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It feels great that so many could join us here tonight. We're here with Ruby, who is on our lobbying staff and works as a therapy dog here at Westminster Church when she is not sleeping. I just wanted to take a moment here to introduce you to Karen LaPierre, who is our office manager at New York State Council of Churches. Karen is the person who makes everything run so smoothly and has been with the council for many years now.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight in support of the Gala for the New York State Council of Churches. I spend a good deal of time working with the certification process for our chaplains, doing event planning and database management, and so many tasks which ensure that the council makes an impact around the state. Thanks to everyone for your kind support. And come see us here at our new offices at Westminster near the Capitol.
New York State Council of Churches would not be where we are without our sponsors. We especially tonight want to thank the Episcopal Diocese of New York for being our generous visionary sponsor. But we also want to thank the New York State Nurses Association, the Community Preservation Corporation, the New York State United Teachers, the United Methodist City Society under the leadership of the Reverend Dr. William S. Shillity, the Metropolitan New York Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, SEIU Local 1199, IUE CWA Local 81359, and the United University Professions for their leadership gifts. In addition, I want to offer a very special word of thanks to Goldstein Hall Attorneys at Law, which in addition to offering a sponsorship, has been so generous in underwriting the Council's Who is My Neighbor seminars. All of the supporters for the Gala are listed later this evening. We especially invite you to donate or even offer a sponsorship. You can go to www.nyscoc.org/support to make a contribution. And since this event will be rebroadcast, we can list additional donations and sponsorships in subsequent airings. Again, thank you everyone for your support.
I greet you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ as we gather this evening to celebrate the good work of the New York State Council of Churches, and on behalf of the American Baptist Churches of New York State, adjudicatory of over 270 congregations across upstate New York, I'm delighted to celebrate especially with you the ecumenical work of the Reverend Joseph Perdue and Mark Breeze, two colleagues of mine in the upstate New York American Baptist work we do. Reverend Perdue is the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Cooperstown, and Mark Breeze is the agency minister and director of ministry and community partnerships for the community missions of the Niagara Frontier, located in Niagara Falls. At First Baptist Cooperstown, Reverend Perdue represents the ecumenical spirit found often in American Baptist congregations, particularly in small towns around upstate New York. He has increased the visibility and presence of First Baptist in the local ecumenical council, and especially in these critical times, he is part of area initiatives to expand food pantry access to food insecure households. Joe is active in our judicatory. He serves on our board and our executive committee. He is involved in all levels of American Baptist denominational life. And his interest in interfaith witness and cooperation has also led him to join efforts in the greater Utica area to expand the work of interfaith cooperation in that area. He also attended recent Baptist-Muslim dialogues that were held nationally, and I'm proud to say coordinated largely by the efforts of the American Baptist Churches USA. Reverend Mark Breeze in Niagara Falls is a great chaplain, and he is a resource person for people in need who come to the many programs offered by Community Missions of the Niagara Frontier. In addition to his previous work as a local church pastor, Mark continues to provide spiritual care and advocacy for the program's clients and the staff. In his nonprofit work, where the agency serves basic human needs day to day, his ministry impacts countless lives through his care and service. He also keeps churches informed of the work of community missions. He is a gracious host and coordinator of many mission trips, including some recent ones offered by our region, where people from churches across the state gathered and spent time working alongside Niagara Frontier staff to help with the day-to-day needs and the projects that help this critical ministry keep moving forward. We are grateful for Mark and his tireless commitment to this call.
Good afternoon. It is such an honor to receive this award, and I am so grateful to be here alongside so many remarkable faith leaders. I have been committed for a long time to doing interfaith and ecumenical work. I am a member of the Interfaith Coalition of Greater Utica, its activist wing Interfaith Matters, and I am a participant in the Third Baptist Muslim Dialogue. As much as I love interfaith work, bringing Christians together to work towards a common goal is my greatest passion. Working together in unity is, of course, profoundly theological. We will be known as Christ's followers by our love for each other, and Jesus taught us that the world will know that Christ is sent from God by our unity. But ecumenical work is also pragmatic. I live in a very small town that can barely afford to support 6 churches, and there is absolutely no reason we shouldn't work together and share resources as we labor towards a common goal. When I arrived in Cooperstown, we found that there were friendly relationships between the churches and even partnerships between many of them. However, First Baptist Church, the church that I was called here to serve, was largely isolated from the ecumenical community, with a few exceptions. The congregation would uncircle its wagons once a year for a sunrise Easter service with other churches down by the lake, but there wasn't much else. It wasn't much, but it was a start. So I organized the Easter service, and I helped expand it beyond its traditional format to include arts and liturgical dance, so it wasn't just another service that happened to be early in the morning. From there, I worked with my colleagues to help bring the churches together by combining our worship services on special days throughout the church year. For example, the Baptist and Catholic churches now co-host a Blessing of the Palms service during the 10 o'clock worship hour on the combined church lawns. In the beginning, each congregation that participated would go back to their own building for the rest of worship, but eventually, the Presbyterian congregation started staying at First Baptist to continue worshiping with us, and from there a pattern has developed over the years. First Baptist now invites all the local churches to ecumenical services for Pentecost, just like we co-host Palm Sunday with our Catholic neighbors, and we participate in other special services that are hosted by other congregations. And in addition to all that, each congregation takes turns hosting events for special days like Ash Wednesday and Holy Thursday and so on, in addition to various ecumenical Bible studies. We also have had success starting an ecumenical praise and worship service on Saturday nights to reach out to our neighbors who do not enjoy traditional worship or who have to work on Sunday mornings. Being in a town where the largest employer is the hospital means that quite a few people can't worship on Sunday mornings along with the rest of us. And that service is led by myself along with a Methodist colleague. And I'm also working with Methodist and Presbyterian colleagues to start building an ecumenical student ministry to serve the entire village, because we are stronger whenever we share resources and we work together. And of course, it goes without saying that many of these ecumenical activities and services have been put on hold because of COVID, but I'm optimistic that we can hit the ground running as soon as it's safe to meet again. One positive thing that has come out of the COVID crisis is that the Baptist and Presbyterian churches have started working together more closely than ever before. The Presbyterian pastor resigned at the beginning of the pandemic, and we worked together to host an ecumenical virtual worship service until the Presbyterian interim got in place. We did our own thing again for a while, but we've been worshiping together, alternating sanctuaries ever since August when it was safe to worship in person again. And each congregation is excited to explore the future together and see what God has in store for our churches as we work together to bring God's realm to earth in Cooperstown. The most important thing I have found doing this work is that we are all stronger when we work together. Our differences are not a cause for division, they are complementary. My friends don't have to be wrong in order for me to be right, and it's essential that we take the time to recognize the validity of each other's theology, experiences, and traditions. I don't think it's enough to tolerate our differences, or even to work alongside each other while believing that we are more correct than our siblings and other denominations. I think we have to accept that God is working just as much in other Christian communities, no matter how different they are from ours, and that we each have equally valid perspectives that are based on our own experiences of grace.
Hello, I'm Reverend Mark Brees. I'm the agency minister at Community Missions in Niagara Falls, New York. First, I just want to say thank you. I'm very grateful and honored to have even been thought of for the Ecumenical and Faith Formation Award this year. Until I got the call saying that I was one of the 2 people receiving an award, I didn't know that I'd been nominated. I didn't even know that there was an award. So surprises out of the blue like this are nice, and it's personally meaningful to me to receive validation for one's work from one's colleagues. So thank you for that. Also, I'm not so sure that I need to see it, or I can just see it as an award for myself, as much as I have to see it as an award for Community Missions and our amazing staff. Because without the agency and that great staff, I wouldn't have the ability to do this kind of work. Also, I think we really need to keep in mind and see this as an award being something for all of the many women and men in ministry in very localized settings like Community Missions who do this kind of work every day across the state. So all of that said, since many of you will not really know about Community Missions, here's the super brief rundown. The mission was founded in 1925, and we offer crisis services such as emergency housing in our shelter, a soup kitchen, food pantry, rapid rehousing programs, parole reentry programs, just to name a few of them. We also offer a whole range of residential and community-based services for youth and adults with severe and persistent mental illness. And all of this work is very local and very one person at a time. And I often describe our work as being a reflection of Jesus's earthly healing ministry. Because he placed no limits on who could come to him, whether it's Gentile or Jew, male, female, religious, not religious, nationality. Jesus just met each person right where they were with compassion and dignity. And his healing also always meant that the stigma, the perceived uncleanness from the illness was removed. So Jesus's grace ended their isolation and paved the way for them to move from the margins of society back to the center. Literally, they could be welcomed home. At Community Missions, we also do this. We minister to those on the margins, those who have been pushed aside and ignored, meeting people right where they are with compassion and hope, and treating people with dignity and helping them find and elevate their place in the world, ending their marginalization, helping them find home. My specific work then is much the same. It's about meeting people where they are religiously and spiritually. And people are at a lot of different places religiously and spiritually. It doesn't matter that I personally grew up as an American Baptist and Zwingli is my guy. What matters is that I meet each person in all their diversity at the place where they are religiously and spiritually. And I support them as they need it and as they choose while they grow into their own faith journey, or as if they choose not to support them still. That's what drives the ecumenical and interfaith component of my work, I think. It takes into account this diversity of belief and practice. It just makes sense to me to work across denominational lines. I really just can't do this sort of work without creating partnerships with and among religious traditions. Deliberately working this way, I think, shows those we serve that there are many different ways that spiritual growth can happen. And if they choose that kind of path, it helps that they have the ability to find a way and a place that works for them. There's another thing too. Working broadly with ecumenical and interfaith partners like this does something that is super important. It helps the faith community get working together, and so presents the broader community with a unified message and example of what living with compassion looks like. The faith community then, by example and practice, helps to create tolerance and openness. It shows that people of all faith traditions do indeed care for those in need, and that together we can make a difference. So this approach at the missions made it possible for me to create things like, say, our Gardens of Compassion, a therapeutic mental health initiative that also teaches about caring for creation. This approach becomes something like the Sunday Cabaret, where ministries work together to create a chance to break bread together with people and share in fun activities and entertainment. Or it turns into our Sacred Sites of Niagara tours, where people in our mental health programs, our staff and others have an opportunity to visit different places of worship in the community and learn about the meaning of the spiritual homes of their neighbors. Or it can lead to our annual interfaith prayer service that we just celebrated its 10th anniversary this year, where the diverse faith community prays with one voice for recovery and understanding around mental illness. And perhaps most significantly of all in its reach, I think, in a lot of ways, are the nearly countless and diverse volunteers who come to the mission over the years. People who have come from ministries locally and from around the country. And while those volunteers serve, they come to understand that there really are no others, no them. They learn in a hands-on, tangible way that we're all one humanity, equally loved and equally valued by the divine. And of course, these COVID-19 days, all this kind of volunteer-driven work that's grounded in the notion of being present with one another, that showing up is key, it's been challenged. Creating COVID-19 safe spaces for the vulnerable populations we serve has really limited, even halted this in-person volunteer-driven ministry. So one of my main responses over this time has been to create and promote our hopeforniagara.org website. It's a place where the community can find reflections from local clergy and others, links to local online worship opportunities, and a range of spiritual resources from as many traditions as I can come up with. It's not a perfect solution, but we keep on looking for ways we can reach out. And of course, I keep trying to be as safely available as I can to offer spiritual support to those in need. So thank you once again for this, and my congratulations to all the other award recipients this year. God bless you all.
The New York State Council of Churches is an ecumenical body which seeks to break down walls and silos to make clear that every person is created in the image of God and needs to be accorded the utmost dignity, regardless of their race, religion, or nationality. Our biblically centered and historic ecumenical work takes place at the local, state, and national level in conjunction with the National Council of Churches. Our commitment to ecumenism also leads us into the international realm. As a council, we've made a choice to partner with our friends in India, and most especially the Church of South India, which is the largest ecumenical body in the world. In 2018, 12 of us were invited to go to India by the Reverend Dr. Gideon Jebamani, who is a member of our executive committee, to visit with our partners in the Church of South India, where we could learn and grow together. Unfortunately, much to our collective shock, 9 of us were deported at the Chennai airport, and sent home because we were Christian. Our plight, our disappointment, we soundly learned, was not unusual, since Christian visitors are sent home from Indian airports on a daily basis. And our misfortune showcased the profound discrimination experienced by religious minorities in India and the prevalence of severe human rights violations. In 2019, I was able to successfully enter India with Father Jebamani, where we could meet with our partners and experience firsthand the blessings of the Indian people and also learn more about their struggles. Here's a sampling of images from our trip to India and also pictures of our Indian friends upon their visits to the United States. The opening image is of Dalit drummers who played at the 50th anniversary of the Tamil Nadu Theological Seminary in Madurai. Dalit drummers use the beat of the drum as a way to illustrate their struggle and to defy their oppressors. When Gideon and I returned home, we have resolved to work with the Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations, our denominational partners, and many others, including Muslim and progressive Hindu groups, to highlight for Americans the violations of human rights and religious freedom in India. We have aimed to support the Indian people in their quest for a more just society, which is premised on Indian democratic principles enshrined in India's secular constitution. We invite Americans to learn more about the struggles of the Indian people and lift up their voices in the halls of power in the United States and India.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Evelyn Kirk. I am the coordinating chaplain for Albion Correctional Facility, as well as the president of New York State Council of Churches Protestant Chaplains Association. I would like to take this time to thank all of the chaplains for their diligent and hard work that they're doing right now in this very difficult time as we battle against COVID-19, systematic racism, and the election stress disorder. Thank you for your hard, diligent work and for using this time as an opportunity to minister to so many different families, so many different people in the United States of America. I would also like to say that I am humbled and honored to introduce to you a great friend, a colleague, chaplain, and pastor. She is a native of Buffalo, New York. She completed her undergrad studies at Virginia Union Universities in Richmond, Virginia, receiving a Bachelor's of Arts degree with dual majors in history and political science. She completed coursework and studies that earned a Master's of Science degree in Buffalo, New York at the University of Buffalo in planning and having her concentration on urban affairs. She also received a Master's of Divinity from Northeastern Theological Seminary at Roberts Wesleyan College in Rochester, New York. She has successfully completed all necessary units of clinical pastoral education with the Catholic Health Systems of Buffalo, New York for chaplaincy, as she has received both New York State certification and board certification in chaplaincy. In addition, she has served on the committee of the Christian Education of Oil Creek Baptist Association of the American Baptist Churches of Pennsylvania and Delaware. As well, she served as state secretary for Clergy Division of Pennsylvania State Baptist Convention. Currently, she is a state chaplain for New York State Department of Corrections and an associate minister at Shiloh Baptist Church of Erie, Pennsylvania, where her husband, Anthony G. Harris, is the senior pastor. I would like to introduce to you my friend and colleague, Reverend Rochelle L. Macy Harris.
Thank you, Reverend Kirk, for that introduction. I would like to thank the New York State Council of Churches and Peter Cook for this award. The Lord has allowed me to serve as a chaplain in the prison system. The prison is good ground to share and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have seen God do some amazing things in the lives of people that society has counted out and forgotten about. But believe me, the blood still works. Men are coming to Christ. I've been able to baptize 200 or more. The ministry of reconciliation is live and active. And again, I would like to thank the Council of Churches for this award. I truly feel blessed.
Good evening. My name is Bill Gottschalk Fielding. I'm the Director of Connectional Ministries and the Assistant to the Bishop in the Upper New York Conference of the United Methodist Church. And it is my honor to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Charles B. Grimm, this year's recipient of the New York State Council of Churches Chaplaincy Award. I can't imagine anyone who better exemplifies the ministry of chaplain or who deserves this recognition more than the man that we all know as Buzz. Buzz is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church. He received his BA from Heidelberg University and his Master of Divinity and Doctor of Ministry degrees from Drew University. From the time of his ordination to his retirement, Buzz has spent over 40 years in full-time chaplaincy, serving in various institutional settings: the Otis Training School for Boys, the New Hampton School for Boys, the Industry School for Boys. He was area chaplain with the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. And from 1986 until the present, he served as the chaplain of the Rush Fire Department. In each of these settings, Buzz served as pastor, counselor, role model, and advocate. He has served hundreds and hundreds of children and youth who were cut off from family and friends, who struggled with learning and social skill development, who were angry and broken and afraid and confused, and who, like everyone else, needed love and deserved love. Jesus urged his followers to love the least of these. Buzz has spent his ministry embodying this call, and we honor him tonight. I first met Buzz in the early 2000s after he'd retired. I was pastoring the church where his son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughters were members. I always look forward to the holidays and birthdays when Buzz and Joan would come to visit their family, and he and I'd have a chance to talk. Now, as I said, Buzz at that time was retired, but within 5 minutes of meeting him, I knew that his passion and love for chaplaincy had not retired. He was just as passionate and a strong advocate for these ministries in retirement as he was in his active ministry. He has kept it before the New York State Council of Churches and the churches of upstate New York, not afraid to speak on the floor of our annual conference to advocate for those who are in institutions and who are deserving of God's love and care. Years after his retirement, nothing has changed. Buzz remains a staunch advocate for any and all who live in institutions and for those who seek to bring God's love to those persons. So thank you, Buzz, for who you are and what you've given to so many. You are a chaplain's chaplain, and it is our honor to honor you this night. God bless you, my friend.
Bill, thank you for your kind introduction. I really appreciate that. And your taking part on my behalf on this special award. Also, Peter, I want to thank you and certainly the New York State Council of Churches for your support over the years. The Council of Churches has been with me through thick and thin, and I've really appreciated that. I have enjoyed every day of my 40 years as a chaplain with the Office of Children and Family Services, and earlier as it was known as the Division for Youth. And in that, I had to retire, and I would keep on going, but I did retire in '99, and I am now a volunteer at industry school with what they call the Board of Advisor, and I enjoy every minute of that. The boys are sent to the juvenile facilities because they've been unsuccessful in their home and school and community, unsuccessful in finding any kind of meaning and purpose in their lives. They felt rejected, and they've responded with negative behavior. They come to the facility angry and mistrustful. So as their chaplain, I have felt that one of the first things I want to do is to begin a relationship with them, not only myself, but with the church volunteers that come in and with the staff that are there. A relationship that will build trust and build their acceptance of what's happening in their rehabilitation. As their chaplain, I have had worship services, youth fellowship groups, brought volunteers in to begin these relationships. And I call that friendship evangelism. You know, these kids, the boys, they want friendship. Their tough exterior is their way of protecting themselves from being hurt again, over and over again. But I know with the boys, as I've worked with them, deep down, they want a good relationship. They want friendship. They want to be trusted. And the way they do that is through other people who will do that and show that. So when volunteers come into the facility, I ask them to just be themselves, just sit down with the young men and relate to them. And soon these relationships start to build again. As I say, I call this friendship evangelism. The good news of the church is that we have a message of good news for them, that they are loved, that they are cared about, and that we want to be with them when they return back in the community and help them be successful citizens. So again, I realize that it's not easy, and churches need to feel that they can be with these young men, although sometimes at first it looks like they don't want to be with you, but be open, caring relationships. Again, I want to thank the United Methodist Church for supporting me as a chaplain. Bill, for you and for Bishop Webb, you came down to the facility on site and helped me visit with the boys, as well as Peter. So again, New York State Council of Churches and Bishop Webb and Bill, thank you for your continued support.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Deutsch. I'm the Executive Director of the Fiscal Policy Institute, and I'm also a huge fan of the New York State Council of Churches. I can't tell you what a year we're in for this year. This looks like it's going to be one of the worst budget years we've seen in a very long time, and there's a lot at stake right now. And I really am appreciative for all the work that the New York State Council of Churches has been doing with the Fiscal Policy Institute over the years. I can't even begin to tell you how important that has been. And I've really enjoyed immensely working with Peter Cook, the Executive Director of the New York State Council of Churches, as well as the many members scattered throughout New York State. We're looking at a budget shortfall of nearly $60 billion over the next 4 years. And we don't know how much we're going to get from Washington. Clearly, things have changed in the last few days, and it's looking like we are going to get some relief from Washington, but it begs the question, how much, and will it be enough? And I would suggest that it's not going to be nearly enough to meet the gaping budget holes that we're facing. So once again, the Fiscal Policy Institute is looking to work arm in arm with the New York State Council of Churches. Peter and I, over the years, have traveled from Buffalo to the Bronx and countless cities in between along the New York State Thruway and the Southern Tier and the North Country and all over New York State, really talking about the fact that the budget is a moral document. And the budget really does set out the state's priorities. And I think that caring for those with the least is by far the most important budget priority we can have. And asking those with the most to contribute a little bit more is also essential in these really hard times that we're facing. So, we've seen a pandemic, we've seen racial unrest in the streets, we've seen leadership that time and time again is not doing the right thing by the people, both this country and this state. So I'm really, thrilled to continue to work with Peter Cook and the New York State Council of Churches as we move forward to create a just and fair budget for everyone.
Nurses are known to have patience. Aren't we patient people? We take care of patients and we have patience, but we don't have any more patience because what is going on here is all about power. This is the corporate union busting capital of the state of New York, and we're going to stop it, aren't we? Yes. Because what makes a hospital? Is it a building? No. Is it a CEO? No. Is it a board of trustees? No. What makes a hospital? Nurses. What makes a hospital? Nurses. And without nurses, is there a hospital? No.
Hi, my name is Mark Emanation. I'm the director of the Capital District Area Labor Federation. And I'm honored to be here tonight for the New York State Council of Churches Awards. And I'm especially happy to give the award, the Social Justice Award, to the nurses at Albany Medical Center, Ellis Hospital, and Bellevue Hospital. These nurses have been fighting over the last several years for their patients, for safe staffing, for safe conditions for themselves in the middle of a pandemic, and for the things that everyone wants: good wages, good working conditions, and good benefits. But besides that, these nurses are fighting for democracy. All of the nurses at these hospitals overwhelmingly voted for the right to be represented by a union, to come together, each and every one of them in union, to work on the things that they feel they need for themselves and their families, but for their hospital and their patients and for each other. And that's what a union is in its purest form, is people coming together, pooling their resources and pooling their aspirations. And that's what they did. They voted overwhelmingly, but the employers at these hospitals weren't so democratic minded as these nurses. And it took a whole period of time for the nurses at Ellis and Bellevue to get their first contract, and then it took a whole period of time for them to win a good second contract, which they have now done. The nurses at Albany Med have not been so fortunate, and they, almost 3 years ago, voted overwhelmingly to form a union and started negotiating in good faith with the employer, and the employer, time after time after time, has offered them contracts that no one would sign. Contracts that doesn't have safe staffing, that doesn't have the patient's interest first and foremost, that puts profit over people, that also doesn't provide these nurses what they rightfully deserve. As we know, in these hard times of this pandemic, these nurses are heroes who are on the front line fighting to save as many lives as possible. And in the course of it, they risk their own lives. And the nurses at Albany Med have been forced to have inadequate personal protective equipment, have inadequate things that they need, like masks, simple things like masks, and then have criminal safe staffing ratios where they're taking care of way too many patients for one person to take care of. And it's especially important right now that they get as much support as possible. And one wonderful support is the New York State Council of Churches giving them the Social Justice Award. I think it's apropos because social justice is trying, at the core of it is fighting for a better world. And these nurses, that's what they're doing. Every single day, they're fighting for a better world. So thank you very much.
Peace, love, and liberation, everybody. I'm so honored to be here with y'all today. And I'm representing as an artist and activist, but also as a mother. My daughter was here at Albany Med. She had a rare disease, and the nurses at Albany Med helped to save her life. I am forever indebted to the incredible nurses here, and they deserve the contract that protects their rights, the contract that gives them what they need and deserve. So that's why I'm here. I'm here as an artist and activist, but also as a mother and a community member who's so grateful for your work.
Thank you, New York State Council of Churches, for the Social Justice Award. We appreciate your continued and steadfast support. We are currently at a negotiating session, and hopefully by the time this airs, we will have a ratified contract. Woo!
Hi, my name is Sue Daly. I work at Ellis Hospital, and I would like to thank you for the Social Justice Award. It's very appreciative. We worked hard for our contract. We got what we wanted, no gift bags, and the nurses are definitely appreciative of where we are, and we'd like to thank you for this award.
Hi, on behalf of the Bellevue nurses, we would like to thank you for this Social Justice Award. It's been a long journey trying to get a good contract here at Bellevue, but we'd like to acknowledge that all the community support we got along the way really helped us along. Again, thank you for everything.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. These words from the first chapter of John's Gospel express an essential truth about God's power in the world. Even in the midst of the darkest times, the darkest situations, the power of darkness can only be temporary. When combined with these words of Jesus, "You are the light of the world," we begin to understand and appreciate the work that Christopher Vergara does for God's people as chair of our Synod's Advocacy Task Force. For people in some of the darkest circumstances of violence at home and detention in a hoped-for country of refuge, Christopher and those he mobilizes to work with him bring not just a taste of freedom and human compassion and companionship, but a glimmer of divine light and grace. From the joy of kids who have been separated from their families, being able to go to the circus and possibly, even for just a moment, forget their cares, to getting migrant minors out of detention, to taking the national lead on having the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America declare itself a sanctuary church body, what Christopher does is bring light. And if you know him, you know that his personality shines that light through humor and faith. Christopher is one of the funniest people I know, and deadly serious about the work he does for those needing hope and refuge. I am so grateful for Christopher and those who share his passion for taking seriously their identity as light of the world. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Christopher Vergara and to congratulate him on this well-deserved award.
Good evening. I'm so honored and privileged to be receiving the Social Justice Award from the New York State Council of Churches this year. I'm honored to be receiving this award from such a wonderful organization that does so much work in our state, and I'm humbled to be considered amongst this evening's nominees and recipients. I guess I would start by thanking the people of Metro New York Synod who have consistently stood up for and created, engaged in caring for their neighbor and creation. And it's well beyond the recent resolution memorial to church-wide assembly for the Evangelical Lutheran Church to declare itself a sanctuary denomination. But also thank Bishop Paul Eggensteiner, who keeps advocacy and the work of social justice at the forefront of his ministry with us, especially in his vision plan moving forward for our synod. I'd like to thank my personal community of faith, St. Peter's Church, who consistently, through its words and its actions, have shown me and others in our community the connection of doing the work of social justice and caring for our neighbor, and how that is linked to our, very tightly linked to our faith. I'd like to thank my family, obviously, who my parents are immigrants, my partner's immigrants, my child's an immigrant, and the resiliency. My partner, Roberto Lara, and my son, Jose Javier, are examples daily to me as survivors of this, awful immigration system that we live in, what it means to be compassionate, what even going through the system, what it means to care for others. And that's something that I'm lucky to have them on a daily basis. I'd like to thank my father, who recently passed away. He was a Navy vet, and service obviously was something very important to him. And my mom, there were difficult times growing up, especially as a single immigrant mom in New York City. But she never believed in the lie of scarcity, but always in God's abundance. And that allowed us to, even in the hard times, focus in caring and giving for others. And that's something really important, I think, especially during these COVID times where it can seem so bleak, that we can continue to care for our neighbor, that we can continue to care for creation, that we can continue to share God's love among all of God's people during this, bleakest of times, I think is so important, and is something that I hope that we all continue to do during this time. So thank you for this award. It means so much to me and the communities that I am a part of. Have a good evening.
I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me. All along my pilgrim journey, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. In my trials, Lord, walk with me. In my trials, Lord, walk with me. When the shades of life are falling, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me.
Thanks, Sherry, for a lovely performance. I really celebrate the struggle of our nurses to form a union and work diligently for a fair contract. The Council will always be strong advocates for unions and the rights of workers to be treated justly. Our support of the Council ensures we can be there as faith communities for unions. We can be a voice for justice. In addition, we are committed to helping our denominational partners work ecumenically to be a united front in advocating for immigrants and the incarcerated. The Council works together to address wealth inequality and significantly expand availability of affordable housing while ensuring access to a quality education, healthcare, and childcare. I encourage you to donate to the council so that we can strengthen our cooperative ecumenical efforts and support our churches in every part of the state in the struggle for justice. Please donate at www.nyscoc.org/support. And we thank you.
We live in a time when communities of faith are revisiting their mission and thinking anew about how their property can embrace that mission and become a blessing for their neighbors. In New York, faith institutions own an extraordinary amount of property. Often, however, this property is underutilized and in disrepair. At the same time, we are facing a profound shortage in well-designed, affordable housing for people of all incomes. As a council, we seek to help congregations rediscover their mission and repurpose their property through our Who is My Neighbor seminars, while partnering with Bricks and Mortals, the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, and the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. Our pre-development work, where we offer congregations of any faith technical assistance and grants, is now funded by a generous grant from Trinity Church Wall Street. Helping congregations be a blessing on their communities requires a particular kind of expertise, which has been offered by our three distinguished honorees, Jason Labate, Tiffany Zazula, and Donna Scopper. Jason, who is the Senior Associate Counsel at Goldstein Hall, Attorneys at Law, is one of the best legal experts we know who has a gift for helping congregations work through very complex legal questions so that they can enter into responsible mission-focused development. Jason serves as chairman of the board for Bricks and Mortals and serves as legal counsel to the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. He has really helped us imagine and implement our Who is My Neighbor seminars. Another attorney, Tiffany Zazula, who's the deputy director at the Pace University Land Use Law Center, has exceptional expertise in helping congregations work with their neighbors and with cities to participate in and lead community conversations about how we welcome people into a community and provide housing for them. Her patient and relationship-centered approach has been foundational in creating our seminars. And finally, Donna Scopper, senior pastor at Judson Memorial Church and founder of Bricks and Mortals, has done so much to help congregations not become agents of gentrification, but instead imagine the possibilities for using their property to do great inclusive and justice-centered ministry. Jason, Tiffany, and Donna, each in their own way, have done so much to help us as a state care for one another and be better neighbors.
Thank you, Peter, and many thanks to the New York State Council of Churches. I really appreciate this award. Also, a hearty and well-earned congratulations to my co-awardees, Tiffany Zazula and Donna Scopper. If I may take the privilege, I'd like to share with you a couple thoughts on this area of work over the next couple minutes. On the founding of this state and this nation, faith-based organizations were the original, and at the time the only, centers of community benefit and care. Faith-based organizations were empowered, pretty much obligated by the Crown, to care for the tired, the poor, the hungry, the sick, basically all of the needy. But they also served frequently as the town courthouse and meeting hall. Today, clearly much has changed. There are tens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of both secular and religious not-for-profits providing services in our communities. However, notwithstanding this diversification of services, a confluence of at least three factors has again, in my opinion, placed faith-based organizations in New York City, New York State, and across this country squarely at the center of community benefit and care. First, faith-based organizations own a lot of real estate. In 2018, according to tax data, approximately 6,000 properties are owned by faith-based organizations in New York State alone. That's a lot of property. Second, for those faith-based organizations with the longest history in this country of providing service, attendance and tithes are decreasing, while deferred maintenance on decades-old and in some cases centuries-old buildings continues to accrue to the tune of tens and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not to mention the fact that these buildings are frequently outdated, ill-suited for the needs of today's congregations, and really, really expensive to heat and cool. Not to mention the fact that most houses of worship were built in an era before car travel. And therefore, there's a far greater density of houses of worship in our communities than are practicable in this modern era of automotive travel. Lastly, there's a great need for communal space and a need for real communing in our communities. Even before the pandemic, but particularly now, there's a housing crisis, a hunger crisis, and a shortage of communal engagement and discussion that can be brought about by things like the arts, celebrations, public service, and public meetings, to name a few. In short, communities need faith-based organizations, and faith-based organizations need communities, now more than ever. When I met Peter several years ago and understood his work with the council, I knew I found a kindred spirit. I was honored to be a part of the council's Bridging the Urban-Rural Divide 2 years ago, and I am very proud that I and Goldstein Hall have partnered with the New York State Council of Churches on their Who is My Neighbor seminars. These seminars are so important and so good. Peter and the council have really worked to understand the needs of the congregations and to develop thoughtful, theologically rooted, practical guidance as to how congregations can maximize their space for mission and community benefit, while balancing realistic income needs and expectations. If you haven't already, I encourage you to check out the materials on the council's website. And I don't know if we have any coming up, but you should attend if you could. To me, this award is so very much appreciated because it confirms that not only am I doing the right work, but I'm doing it with the right people. I've been and continue to be honored to work with Tiffany Zazula and the Pace Land Use Law Center, not only on the Who is My Neighbor seminars, but also on our jointly sponsored annual Hudson Valley Affordable Housing Summit. And if you haven't checked out their Lula trainings, you should. I'm an alum. And Donna and I are co-chairs of Bricks and Mortals together, but I think everyone knows that it was her idea, and most of its success, if not all of it, is driven by Donna and her determination and wisdom. I'm constantly awed by you, Donna, by your tireless efforts, your continued insight, and foresight. So thank you for letting me work with you on that and being my partner and leader in it. Lastly, I'd like to thank my firm Goldstein Hall, a certified B Corp, for their continued support of my work in this area and their financial support of the Who is My Neighbor seminars. Goldstein Hall really cares about communities and community betterment, and they've given me the time and space necessary to support these efforts. So thanks, guys and ladies. Again, thank you, Peter and the council. I'm honored and humbled to receive this award. But enough talking. Let's get back to work.
Thank you to the Executive Committee of the New York State Council of Churches for honoring me with the Affordable Housing and Community Development Award this year. I'd also like to congratulate Jason LeBate and Donna Schapper, the other award recipients, for their amazing work. It's been an honor working closely with the Council of Churches on the Who's My Neighbor seminars and trainings, and working closely with Jason, Reverend Peter Cook, and Reverend William Wilkinson as well. But this award wouldn't be possible without all the dedicated local officials and the leaders in our community that I am lucky enough to work with each and every day. They have the hard work, not me. Whether it be through the Land Use Law Center's Land Use Leadership Alliance training program, or through my center staff's role at local public workshops, I meet with individuals that come from a diverse background in land use and a diverse perspective on how the land should or shouldn't be developed. But the one thing that they do have in common is that they're volunteers and they love their community, and that inspires me. Whether they serve on local land use boards or on committees or are simply active citizens getting involved in the issues, they all care. And this love of the community has continued as I've begun to work with faith-based leaders in the Who's My Neighbor seminars, as they begin to look closely at their properties and their missions and in ways in which they can redefine what they are doing quite literally with their buildings and their space. Faith-based leaders are realizing the continued importance that they play in revitalizing neighborhoods and or assuming the role in helping to promote things like affordable housing. As many of you know, the dialogue is not always easy in the arena of land use. And my hope is that local leaders will continue to find ways to become better facilitative leaders, to continue to work with people, to have a conversation proactively and collaboratively instead of reacting in adversarial ways. This has been what's so important about the work that I do, and that the reason I love it so much. Having better conversations, productive conversations around land use controversy. We can't solve conflict, but we can plan around it. We can work on it in ways that keep relationships intact. So it's simply about remembering that it is okay to disagree. It's okay to have differing opinions, but in the end, we are people. And we can treat each other with kindness and respect, even in the face of disagreement and or challenging decisions. So it's been an honor through the years watching municipal officials, land use leaders, and now faith-based organizations work together collaboratively to build strong and trusting relationships with one another that move their community forward. So thank you for all the work that you do. And again, thank you for this recognition tonight.
First of all, thank you so much, Peter, for that lovely introduction and for noticing my work. It's been great to get to know you and to get to know the State Council of Churches around these important matters of bricks and mortals and so many other things about where a person can lay his or her head at night, how to get food to people, how to be something important in my favorite state. I'm a native New Yorker, born in Kingston, live sometimes in Fishkill in the summer where I grow nice tomatoes, and of course, have been in New York City for 16 years at the wonderful congregation of Judson Memorial Church on the south end of Washington Square Park. And from there, we have been able to work with you all and with Jason LeBate and others to form an organization called Bricks and Mortals, which was really an example of collective leadership at its best. We supported each other to get an initial grant from the New York City Community Trust to investigate what was going on with church real estate. And then we moved on from that grant to develop a partnership with the Interfaith Coalition for the Homeless, Mark Greenberg and others, to really think about, as hard as we could, how to get the assets of land, which church buildings do have, more available to the potential, not the actual, but the potential matter of affordable housing in New York City, which, as we all know, suffers greatly from gentrification and gentrification's best friend, racism. We got a grant from Trinity Church Wall Street to do that work and have a partnership that I think is going to result in some affordable housing, something that we desperately need to keep New York City and its great state as exciting as it always has been. You know, when you lose public space, when you have mostly rich people in a city, you lose cultural density, you lose faith, you lose great ideas, you lose the thing we love about New York. You know, everybody mourns Broadway, I mourn the decreasing diversity of class and race and national origin that has happened, but probably is going to shift now. So isn't it exciting that we are gearing up to create affordable housing, cultural density, adaptive reuse of sacred sites? And then lo and behold, the last thing that happened for our common work with Peter and the council and the other organizations I've been mentioning is we just got a grant for $1 million from the Lilly Endowment to take bricks and mortars on the road and go to 5 cities. So I'm happy to receive this award in the name of beautiful, sacred sites that are going to become more useful over time. So thanks a lot. See you soon.
Hello, my name is Christy D'Ambrosio, and it has been a joy and a privilege to participate in the annual Youth Leadership Conference for the past 10 plus years, initially as the chaperone and youth director for the youth of Albany's First Presbyterian Church, and then more recently as the coordinator of the event. The Youth Leadership Conference occurs every winter break. That's President's Vacation Week. It is an ecumenical event designed for high school age students who attend seminars and discuss critical global and national topics for 2 or 3 days. Attendance can range from 20 to 40 youth and chaperones. The conference was originally sponsored by the Synod of the Northeast and took place in New York City. The seminars were initially designed by the Presbyterian office attached to the UN, but then transferred to the United Methodist Women's Seminar Program. Both programs included a tour of the UN. The New York State Council of Churches assumed sponsorship for the past several years, and after the United Methodist Women's Seminar office closed in New York City, the conference moved to Washington, D.C., where that seminar office is still active. This past February, 40 youth and chaperones traveled by train to Washington, D.C. for a conference focusing on discrimination. We attended 2 days of seminars and toured the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The focus of seminars in the past included child soldiers, human trafficking, climate change and environmental responsibility, children enslaved in agriculture and manufacturing practices, war abroad and violence at home, gender justice, and race and discrimination in the 21st century. Heady topics for adolescents, but unfortunately, awareness of global and national issues is sorely lacking in today's youth curriculum. These opportunities promote a greater understanding of the human condition, a deeper connection to our faith and its relationship to social activism. The annual youth seminar impacts the youth who will become the leaders of the next generation. This is important work, and we owe the New York State Council of Churches a great deal of thanks for their sponsorship. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Snyder, and I am the Director of Youth Ministries at Hebron United Presbyterian Church in Salem, New York. First, thank you for your sponsorship. Without your support, it would be incredibly difficult to offer such high-quality leadership and spiritual formation experiences like what we were offered in DC this past spring. None of us would have guessed how timely the content of the forum would be to our very near future while we were there. Coming home, our youth were energized and passionate about effecting change in our community and their school. They shared with our congregation directly and honestly about the need to address issues of racism in our society and, most importantly, as Christians. The forum opened the door for conversations about their struggles with their faith, their own identity, and finding God in the midst of it all. The forum also allowed for important exposure to occur for our youth. The main industry in our county is dairy farming, and many of our youth are directly involved in agriculture. For some of them, getting on a train, walking down a true city street, and being a part of a group that was not nearly 100% fair-skinned, white-looking people were all a very big deal to them. Friendships were created that are carrying on even now. Just the other day, 3 young men in my group commented that they wished they could go back and are already looking forward to the next one. From the speakers to the tours, this trip has left a lifetime impression on our youth that will not soon be forgotten. I have used the content as a springboard for small groups that I was able to hold over the summer outdoors. I've also been able to use the racial wealth gap simulation we experienced with a men's group in our church. Our thanks to your sponsorship cannot be underscored. This trip was truly pivotal in creating group cohesion and lasting relationships and experiences that have drawn them closer to God and to each other in Christian love. Thank you again for your willingness to support our youth and our future.
Hi, my name is Don Hyman, and I was one of the counselors with the group that went to Washington, D.C. this past February during President's Week. We had a really groovy time. The students were great. The staff was great. I met people from all over that I didn't necessarily know before. And when the opportunity came up, they said they were going to the museum, the National African American Museum. I was really excited because everyone was telling me how difficult it was to get in there. Now, the most exciting thing was we stayed at this seminar dorm in Washington, D.C., and I thought, wow, the kids are going to probably be like I was when I was at that age, running around making a lot of noise. But they were well behaved. They had a good time, and we got a lot of good food from Panera. The thing I enjoyed the most was the fact that I realized we were staying in an area that was close to all of the monuments, you know, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the lawn, the Great Lawn, where everybody, you see all those marches and stuff taking place. Well, we took a night tour, and I'll never forget that as long as I lived. It was a trolley. Everybody was excited. We stopped at a lot of different places. I remember being at the Lincoln Memorial, and they showed us where Dr. King stood when he did his famous speech. They had the footprints marked off, and I thought that was a kick. But then I was remembering Marian Anderson standing there singing with that microphone and that mink comb on. I was always saw that picture of her. The most inspiring part of this whole thing for me was being with the students and them actually seeing history come to life. We stopped at the Vietnam Memorial, and I explained to the students that were with me that I was part of the group from Brooklyn College veterans that dedicated that memorial. And that morning we had to march down Pennsylvania Avenue. There were thousands of people. There were other people from all over the country. And I was one of the people chosen to carry the banner for the Brooklyn College veterans. We marched, and everybody's yay, cheering us and carrying on. We made this sharp right turn into the field on the lawn where the Veterans Memorial was at. And when we got there, it was the first time, and I told the students that were with me about this, in my life that I saw so many grown men cry. There's 50,000 names on that wall, and they all brought back memories to people or friends that they had lost or been with. So being with my students and explaining to them that I had been there for that dedication was quite exciting. And I hope we all get together and go back for another one, because there's nothing like traveling to help you to learn.
Hello everyone, I'm Sean Abuna, and I'd just like to talk about my experience during a DC trip we took for First Presbyterian Church last February. I think the trip was very good. I got to learn a lot of new things, make a lot of new friends, visit a lot of new places. For example, the state capitol and African American Museum. Especially for the African American Museum, it was actually a very great experience when we got there. Got to learn a lot of new things about starting from slavery, just to slavery, to redlining, to segregation, to the present day African Americans and the struggles we have to go through. I think it was amazing. And even the conference we had, we got to learn a lot of new things. For example, one thing which caught my eye was they talked about how a lot of Black women struggle during pregnancy when they go to the hospital, and doctors prefer doing a C-section because it's more easier, but it's very, very hard. It's very, very bad because C-sections can lead to a woman dying. Yeah, it might save the child, but the woman will die. The woman has a good chance of dying if that's what is going to be done during pregnancy. So I think it was a great trip. We made a lot of good friends. The place we stayed was great. Even though I didn't enjoy getting up at 6:30, I still had a great time there. And hopefully, the other younger kids in the church can go to many trips. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mari. I'm Anna, and we're from Plattsburgh, New York. This is the board we made from our trip in Washington, D.C., and we had gone to the Hall of Fame and took some pictures of these statues.
On our trip, we went to the African American Museum and the Capitol Building.
We also had gone to the Lincoln Memorial, and when we went to Starbucks, we had ran into Senator Gillibrand.
On our trip there, during the meetings, we learned it's important to be involved in government.
My name is Daniel Ayok. I am with the First Presbyterian Church Group, and overall, the Washington, D.C. trip was a 10 out of 10. I got to experience a lot of new things, see new people, and just adventure Washington. My favorite part of the trip was probably the Black Museum. I got to see a lot about my culture and the things that happened back then. Some of that stuff still happens now, and we had a lot of great conversations about it. I also got to see the House of Representatives and that whole building, and it was amazing. I took a lot of pictures there, and I also seen the war soldiers and their graves, and that was amazing, but it was depressing, but yeah. But overall, the trip was a 10 out of 10 to me, and I thank Christy for bringing us out there, and possibly if COVID clears up, we can go back. I will definitely do that, but I encourage everyone else who hasn't experienced it to go as well.
Hi, my name is Nina Dickinson. I was an adult chaperone for the trip to Washington, D.C. in February of 2020, along with my daughter, Cheyenne Dickinson, who was one of the youth delegates. And we wanted to share a little bit about what we learned and how that trip has changed the way we look at people around us. One of the things that it clearly brought out for me in a whole new way, especially as we walked through the African American Museum and saw more up close than I think I've ever seen the history of slavery and its origins and its impact on everything from birthing to marriage to livelihood to longevity of life, is just how blessed and unaware I have been most of my life as a person who was born very white and has lived almost her entire life in a very white world. So it really has opened my eyes to some things I was beginning to notice and to understand and to think about and to change how I looked at them. But it really brought it to the forefront, going through the museum and seeing that all up close. Cheyenne, what about you?
Okay, for me, seeing all the different landmarks, I know that I am going to try and find a way to make this world a better place, for equality, for everybody, not just for
some.
Some, yeah.
All men and women, all humans have been created equal.
And animals. And everything.
But that's the kind of the gist, is we're learning that it's our turn to take some action to improve not just the equality of life, but the equity of life for all men and women, all humanity. thank you for helping us to go and to learn and to grow a little bit. And we hope you continue to provide this opportunity not only for us, but for others as other opportunities come for young people and not so young people to go and learn about our country, about our world, and about how God wants us to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, friends. This is Reverend Dustin Wright, pastor at Messiah Lutheran Church in Schenectady, New York, and president of the New York State Council of Churches. First of all, I want to deeply thank you for joining us this evening. This was certainly never the annual award dinner that we would have expected, but it is one that I believe tells so many powerful stories about how we are putting our faith in action and supporting activists and organizers and folks making a difference across beautiful New York State. You know, I was asked to talk about why the New York State Council of Churches is important to me. And I think, you know, for all of us, especially over the last, 6 or 7 months of COVID, we've more deeply than perhaps ever been reminded of how important it is to be churches together. I'm very mindful of the history of the last progressive era in America, in both in the last two, really both in the 1960s as well as in the early part of the 1900s, where the ecumenical movement was a backbone of bringing incredibly important changes to American society, from better labor laws to to women's suffrage to supporting the civil rights movement. And we need that another era of progressive reform supported by ecumenical organizations like the New York State Council of Churches today. Myself and folks roughly my age grew up in a time where many of us believe that faith communities were not making a positive impact in the world, that in some ways they were unwelcoming and in some ways doing the exact opposite. But through your support of organizations like the New York State Council of Churches, through your support of action-minded ecumenical organizations, we are changing that narrative around. Whether it is supporting our wonderful prison chaplains who are administering in an unjust criminal justice system, whether it is urging faith communities around across New York State to improve themselves, care more about the needs of their neighbors, and build affordable housing at a time when so many are lacking a safe and comfortable place to live, especially while we're still having the mostly shelter in our homes. At a time when there is an unprecedented climate crisis, and the New York State Council of Churches has been central to pushing forward key legislation in New York State. At a time when there is more worse income inequality than there has been in many, many decades. Faith communities need to work together to make a positive change. And that's why I'm so thankful for all you are doing to support the New York State Council of Churches. And I'd ask that you continue to do so. It's quite easy. If you have not already made a regular gift, if you're an individual, you can go to www.nyscoc.org/support. You can make an individual contribution, whether that's a one-time gift, wonderful, whether that's a recurring gift, even more awesome. And you also, if you are a member of a congregation, you can sign up right at that same website, www.nyscoc.org/support. You can also sign up your congregation to be a covenanting congregation in the New York State Council of Churches. You know, my congregation at Messiah Lutheran Church here in Schenectady has been a covenanting congregation with the New York State Council of Churches for a number of years, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Even here at Messiah, the council has been incredibly helpful in helping us discern how to merge our Lutheran church with a Reformed church down the street and turn their building into a community center that will bring some revenue into Messiah, but more importantly, be of deep service to a community in need. So there are so many really wonderful things that you can be a part of, so many critical ministries you can be a part of through supporting the New York State Council of Churches. Friends, I'd like to close by once again thanking you for joining us. I also want to thank the incredible leadership of our executive community, both clergy and lay leaders from across New York State who come together to discern how we can be church together. And also, I'd like to once again invite you to join us in ministry together towards going forward to help each lift up every voice in the public square on behalf of the poor, the disenfranchised, and to help congregations do their best to be good neighbors and to flourish. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Dustin, for your testimony about the good work of the New York State Council of Churches and for your leadership. We are so grateful to everyone who has joined us for this virtual gathering. We hope our honorees will encourage you to do great ministry and prophetic work wherever you might be serving. I am inspired by the great ecumenical work of the Council and the opportunity they provide to do great ministry in New York and beyond. I again invite you to give to the Council by going to www.nyscoc.org/support. Blessings on you. Stay safe. Be strong in your efforts to love your neighbors and serve them well. God's peace.